Greetings, everybody. I'm David Gardenstein. I'm chair of the Brattleboro Select Board, and I want to welcome all of you to the groundbreaking for Red Clover Commons. It was almost 4 years ago to the day, I think it may be almost to the day yesterday, that Tropical Storm Irene came through. And, you know, it seemed pretty quiet down here in town during the day, but as the storm waters gathered up and made their way into the valleys, there was just real terrible devastation. I remember the flood waters coming through Flat Street and tearing up Route 9. And part of the role of municipal government is to make sure that we're prepared to respond in emergencies. And as we had been watching the storm forecasts, we took the steps that were necessary to take people out of harm's way and to make sure that everybody was safe during the storm. But the devastation that occurred, it really pointed out the need to make sure that people who are living, and some of our most vulnerable population living in the floodway, needed safer places to live. And so we've been working as a community, local, regional, state, and federal government to make sure that we could have affordable housing in a safe place. And we're really, really pleased to have been able to get to this point. We want to welcome to this event Senator Leahy and Ms. Leahy. We want to welcome also from the Brattleboro Housing Partnership, Janet Kramer and Chris Hart from the Housing Partnership. We want to thank and welcome Pat Moulton, who's here today from Agency of Commerce and Community Development. We're very happy to have everybody here working towards building affordable housing, safe, efficient housing, and we look forward very much to hearing from everybody and to today's groundbreaking. Thank you.
Partnership. On behalf of Bill Bedard, former chair, and Marshall Wheelock, and our current commissioners who were appointed by the Brattleboro Select Board to this wonderful responsibility, welcome. David has already talked about partnership, and that's really what I want to celebrate this 4th anniversary of Tropical Storm Irene. We have so much to be grateful for the incredible fortitude and long hours of work from the Brattleboro Housing Partnership staff, and especially you, Chris, to understand the true devastation of Irene's flooding and to plan both immediate and long-term recovery. To the many volunteers, including commissioners, who came to help residents pack their belongings and hope that their homes could be theirs again in the future. For me, it was poignant to help a resident pack her family photographs and mementos to go into the pods alongside the vacant Melrose apartments while she moved to stay with a family or in a motel. There were regular meetings with the select board, town planning staff, and the DRB to find a way to rehabilitate Melrose until we were able to do what we are here to do today. There were lots of meetings with HUD and FEMA people. We're honored to welcome Maura O'Brien and Jen Kudon, program analyst. Maura is the division director, and Jen is the program analyst of the Boston field office of HUD. While Maura and Jen weren't with us right after the flood, their colleagues were, and they let us know how seriously they cared about the residents of Melrose. They helped us through thickets of HUD regulations, and there are thickets, I'm sure you will agree, finding a way to recreate housing for those who have the least ability to house themselves. There was a dedicated committee of Melrose residents, West Brattleboro leaders, Glen Trailer Park survivors, commissioners, and planners. We studied what we wanted the new housing to be and looked at possible locations in Brattleboro, including this vacant lot. Our architects, engineers, the special redevelopment staff of Brattleboro Housing Partnership, and the constant patience of Melrose residents, whose questions have gradually been answered by the plans, elevations, and groundbreaking that is to come. And the best partnership of all, that with Housing Vermont, has opened the way to Red Clover Commons. I know Kathy Beyer of Housing Vermont will say more about how our congressional delegation supported us. But I want to add a special thanks to you, Senator Leahy. And Mrs. Leahy, we are so honored to have you with us here today. Thank you. Kathy Beyer?
I think I'm going to let the senator speak before my remarks. Senator Leahy, we'd love to have you come up and say a few words.
Kathy, thank you very much. I know when you're here, things are going to be done right. Jan and David, thank you for what you said. Pat Moulton and I tag teaming each other around the state today. We talk about what happened 4 years ago. It's hard to believe it was that long ago and that short a time ago both. I arrived here, as I mentioned earlier today, I arrived here along with General Doobie and the governor here the day after Hurricane Irene. It was a gorgeous day, clear as a bell. But as I flew down here, everything I saw, it made me think of the stories my parents, my grandparents told me as I was growing up. As a child, they talk about the flood of 27. You know, when you're a little kid growing up, you don't think much of that. But when I saw bridges twisted, and houses upended, roads gone, communities cut off, some we had to use the helicopter to get into, it hit me. And when I think of how all of you came together, everywhere I went, people were coming together, including people who had been devastated. They still came together. And Marcel and I went all over the state after we went around to say thank you to volunteers. Marcel's a registered nurse. You want to know if they need her help anywhere. And I'll never forget the people we met as we went around the state. Now, what we have here is an example of communities coming together to launch a way to replace Melrose Terrace. More than that, give it new life to Canal Street. While the residents of Red Clover Commons have a new place to call home, I'm glad that the process will maintain the old site as an important asset to Brattleboro. And we're reminded of the challenges we face. I have to keep reminding people in Washington, we got to start worrying about our country. You have those who vote a blank check for wars all over the world, whether they make any sense or not. I'm sorry for the political statements, but when I see $3 trillion wasted in Iraq, I'm reminded of what one Vermonter said to me, telling me, he said, Pat, it appears to me that we spend billions of dollars over there to build bridges and buildings, and then they blow them up. Build them here in Vermont, we'll take care of it. And so I think we have to keep reminding them, rural states like ours need it. And as the most senior member of either party on appropriations, trust me, I'm in a place to remind them, and I do over and over and over again. And having heard one person running for president announced yesterday that we've got to build a wall to block us from Canada. I tell these people, as Marcel's ancestors would say, encore, et encore, et encore. But Housing Vermont, our state housing authorities get together. I know this is going to operate as a SACS site, and that's another way we provide for our own. So I congratulate you all. I know I'm speaking to the converted, but Marcel and I, lifelong Vermonters, we wanted to be here just to say this you are showing us and reminding us, but showing everybody else what Vermont is. We're a community with heart and integrity and willingness to get things done. So thank you all very, very much.
Thank you, Senator Leahy. That was a marvelous reflection on what we do so well in Vermont. I want to be very clear about this event today. We would not be standing here celebrating the groundbreaking of a 55-unit building without the support of Senator Leahy. After Tropical Storm Irene, the Senator was tireless in his efforts to make sure that Vermont received disaster relief funds as the senior Senator on the Appropriations Committee. Both he and his staff paid several visits to to Brattleboro, assuring the Brattleboro Housing Partnership and the residents of Melrose Terrace that they were standing with us until we found a new and safe home for them to live in. We know that you were supported by the rest of our Vermont delegation, Senator Bernie Sanders, who's been a longtime advocate for affordable housing, and Congressman Peter Welch, who has helped us both at his time in Montpelier and now in Washington, D.C. And the end result of your work? We have a $5.5 million community development block grant disaster relief funds for this building. And that is an enormous amount of money. Senator Leahy, on behalf of the 55 households who will be moving into Red Clover Commons next September, I want to express an enormous thank you.
Thank you.
This $5.5 million helped leverage another over $10 million into our project. This includes an equity investment from People's United Bank of $7.5 million. Yes, I said equity, not debt. The equity investment is made possible through a federal low-income housing tax credit program. Art Cassavant from People's United is here today. I want to thank you, Art. Through your leadership, the bank has been a long-time, highly valued investor in affordable housing in Vermont. People's United is also providing the construction loan and a $1 million permanent loan to Red Clover Commons. And we have Arn Hammerlin from People's in the back, a locally raised boy, or locally raised young man, is also here today. The bank's equity investment would not be possible except for the role of the Vermont Housing Finance Agency in administering this low-income housing tax credit program. Sarah Carpenter is here from BHFA, her hands up, and I want to thank her and her staff for making this very complicated IRS program work in this small state. The Vermont Housing and Conservation Board has also made a significant investment in Red Clover Commons with over $1.4 million of state general funds and federal home funds. Aren't we fortunate to live in a state that has a trust fund that invests in both affordable housing and in land conservation? Because we need both. We need an affordable place for Vermonters to live, and we need to conserve our productive and farmland and forest land. I'd like to say thanks to Gus Seelig and his staff who have been steadfast supporters of getting to this day. And I'd also like to thank the support from the legislators, Senator Becca Balint, I knew I was going to say it wrong. Senator Jeanette White, Representatives Molly Burke, Valerie Stewart, and Tristan Tolino. If you're here today, could you put your hands up? I know Jeanette's here. And thank you very much. Your support for VHCB is much appreciated. Lastly, the Vermont State Housing Authority, working with HUD and Brattleboro Housing Partnerships, found a way that we would have 55 project-based rental assistance subsidies for our 55 units here, which means all 55 of the residents who move in here will have a very affordable rent. I want to recognize the fantastic architect, Gossens Bachman Architect, and Greg Gossens is here, who's designed a beautiful building on a site that was slightly challenging, as you can see. And the Trumbull Nelson team is our general contractor today. And they're standing in the back acting like they actually aren't doing all the work here. So, it's kind of fun to get $5.5 million of a grant to your project. But I have to tell you, it's also a lot of work. These funds originate from HUD, and as Janet discussed, HUD has lots of rules and regulations, lots of them. The staff at the Agency of Commerce and Community Development navigated all these rules for us. And quite frankly, I have a feeling they shielded Chris Hart and myself from some of the most frustrating ones to make sure that that $5.5 million was ready and available when we acquired the property. And it was. A huge thanks to Secretary Moulton, to Commissioner Jen Holler, and her staff. You really did make this a process that was not painful. It was joyful to receive the $5.5 million. As most of you know from Brattleboro, Secretary Moulton is another locally raised and talented leader, and we're very fortunate to have her here today.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you, everyone. What an incredible day in Brattleboro. This is the second event Senator Leahy and I have been where we're handing out money. It's a beautiful thing. So
We're always welcome.
We are pleased from the Agency of Commerce and Community Development to be here, and we are administering $40 million in community development disaster recovery funding that has been prompted by Senator Leahy and our congressional delegation, who really helped make this happen. I can't tell you how special that is. I had an opportunity to speak at a disaster recovery conference in New York, and I went sort of blindly saying, well, you need to get some of that CDBG DR money. And they looked at me like, what language are you speaking? So it truly is as a result of the talents of Senator Leahy and our congressional delegation that we have this money, because not every state does. And so my heartfelt thanks to you for the work you and your colleagues have done to make this happen. And we've been funding projects in communities throughout Vermont in areas such as property buyouts, revitalization projects, moving buildings out of floodplains, grants to businesses to get them rebuilt, and repairing and replacing housing. 4 years ago, Irene left her mark on Brattleboro and a lot of Vermont, and we all woke up the next day and couldn't believe what was happening. But the people with lower incomes are often the hardest hit, and particularly in our rural areas, hardest hit and hardest to recover from natural disaster. And this is true in Brattleboro as it is across the state. So the overarching goal of our disaster recovery program is to ensure that low-income Vermonters are not left behind on the road to recovery. It's helping get the residents of Melrose Terrace out of the reach of the whetstone and out of harm's way is a top priority for us at the agency. And we're very pleased to support this project with more than $5.5 million. But that alone is not enough to get to this point. It's taken very committed and talented development team, which is led by Chris Hart of the Brattleboro Housing Partnership and Kathy Beyer of Housing Vermont to get to this point. It's taken the support and leadership of the town, leadership from folks like Dave Gartenstein and his colleagues on the select board, but most of all, it's taken patience and input from the residents of Melrose Place. It has taken formal and behind-the-scenes support from HUD. Our thanks to our HUD team who are here, and thank you to our own Mike McNamara for that. It's also taken a whole lot of other resources. Thanks to Gus at VHCB and Sarah Carpenter at VHFA, who set aside other priorities and projects to make the commitments of their increasingly scarce resources to this Red Clover Commons project. And to Richard Williams at the State Housing Authority, whose support ensured these homes are not only safe and affordable, but they are as deeply affordable as as the housing units they replace. It's taken the support from your state legislators for providing funding to VHCB. And finally, it's taken a lot of hard work from the team that I am lucky and fortunate to work with at the Agency of Commerce and Community Development, led by Jen Holler, our Deputy Commissioner of Housing and Community Development, and overseeing the disaster recovery funds, and Josh, Ann, Kate, Cindy, Wendy, and a whole lot more folks on her staff that have waded through the thickets of regulation, as you say, Janet. But with all good regulation comes good end product too. but by creating new energy efficient, affordable homes out of the reach of floodwaters. The project both addresses and prepares for climate change, and preparing by having these energy efficient units. I have a little soft spot in my heart for Brattleboro in southern Vermont, and my deepest appreciation for helping us help you make your community stronger and safer. Congratulations and continued good luck and success. Thank you.
All right, it's almost time to break ground. One other, we always find every possible pot of money that we can. And Efficiency Vermont, Gary Swindler is here from Efficiency Vermont. They've been helpful not only on the funding, but our innovative energy system, a geothermal system that we'll be using here. So, Chris Hart, come up here. We can't allow you to use one of the backhoes today, but we would like you to lead our efforts in the official groundbreaking for Red Clover Tunnel. And we have some other folks who are going to get a shovel. Come on over. We've got a little spot for
I can tell you, nobody's happier than Marcel down there.
So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, and on 3, pretend you're shoveling, okay? 1, 2, 3. Looking ahead. Keep with your day job.
Marcel thinks that's about as helpful as I ever around home doing it.
All right. Thank you all very much. We look forward to seeing you next fall.